It is Obstructed View, the podcast, and it's Matt Mosley. And I'm being joined today by Rogue Media star and good friend Pete Sousa, who was on the radio call yesterday for Baylor basketball. And in fact, they kept on the TV, which he's more of a TV guy because he's built for it. He dresses for it, everything. But he got to be with Pat Nunley because John Morris was being celebrated for that Chris Schinkel Award, and happy for John on that front. But everybody had to slip in there and fill in for John. And Pete, you did well as always. Welcome to this Obstructed View podcast. I go on your shows and I love it. You come on my radio show, but it hit me the other day as I was listening to you and I saw you on screen. I'm like, man, I want to see if Pete will come on my podcast. And in the synergy of this, Pete, I mean, the Rogue family, they just got to be celebrating today. I just can't even.
The Rogue family is they're like Nolan Ryan right now in his heyday, throwing like 100 plus. Really, King McClure was up in the studios yesterday. His show's back. You got you and I. Yeah, we're humming, baby.
King had one of the longest hiatuses in the history of podcasting. I wish there's one thing that's bugging me about King, and it's just a simple pronunciation of a big man's name, and it's hilarious to me because he's in a standoff about it. Whoever's doing play-by-play, whoever it is, says the name, and then in the next sentence, I almost think it's a bit that King's doing. In the next sentence, he says it differently, and then you'll do it again, and you'll go, "Oh, John won a great play," and then King goes, "Oh, John Una, great play," and it's just it's almost like they're doing a bit, and I'm here for it. Now, Pete, yesterday's game. Let's start right there because I got a few things I want to get into with you today, and love your background, by the way. And I mean, my gosh, I don't know, it's like Restoration Hardware or something. I mean, you've got a whole. You might have a hard hat on or something here. I've just got a few credentials, but junky credentials. Every place I've ever been is back behind me. But thanks to Rogue, I've got all this beautiful. I've got a great camera now. I've got a little.
You got great equipment. Yeah, you look great.
Hold on. I've always wanted here, Mike. Hold on to that part where he says I have great equipment. Okay, I want that. I want him to. I want that to be used for forevermore. Now can you see my boom mic? Is it?
Yeah, I see a little bit.
You? Okay, kind of a Rogan-like thing. A lot of people compared this show. Anyway, they're playing against a team called
Norfolk
State, and where is that? Is that Virginia?
It's like Newport News, Virginia, like where Michael Vick is from, Allen Iverson territory.
Yeah. Because you went to Richmond and played football there. So you're kind of, that
very
world.
Familiar with that area.
That world. What we found pretty quickly in that first half was that the Norfolk Staters, they came to town in like, they weren't just there to grab their check. Like some teams are like, hey, beat us by 50 and then we'll head on out. This team's been to the NCAA tournament. They've done a few things, and they have some athletes. And what was kind of funny, and I had Scott on yesterday, the radio show, they had some chase down blocks. I mean, those dudes were.
Dude, the one guy, so there's backstory to that. And, of course, allow me to bring any kind of Philadelphia into it. So Rob Wright went to Newman Goretti, Philadelphia Catholic League School, right? And the guy Ings, who he was playing against, preceded him at Newman Goretti. He's probably like 5 years older, with all the transfer stuff. So they never played together. But so Rob stole the ball from this guy and was going coast to coast for a layup. And this dude sounds like he made up his mind, like, come hell or high water, I am going to – this kid is not going to punk me like this. So he raced, like you said, the length of the court and pinned it. It was pretty awesome. But to what you're saying, that was a window into the type of effort we were getting from them. Yeah. And to Baylor's credit, bodies on the floor everywhere. That's always a team you can be proud to root for.
I'm sure it strikes you every once in a while. I mean, one of the things about Baylor, it's like they want it to be I mean, they're a program that is obviously put up blue blood type numbers. One thing you can't quite get Waco to do is on an 11 a.m. game where Scott, admittedly after the game, thought that was going to be that scream game where all the elementary kids show up. And so they would at least have a bunch of kids in there for even Baylor, even as awesome as they've been. You can't get a big crowd, and the students are taking finals. I was like, man, this does not look good.
Yeah, he owned it. He said it was his fault.
Yeah, he did. It did not look good on TV, and I thought to myself, well, the good news is the only thing that was shared nationally from that game, Pete, would have been VJ's dunk. And I don't think people are going to be watching like, oh, how many empty seats are in there? I mean, that was – and what's funny is you were calling the game live on radio. I had done the typical Mosley thing of, okay, this thing's like they got a 24-point lead. I'm going to go kind of walk around for a minute, do some things. And fortunately, I did pause it. And then you must have been texting me during a break, or knowing you could probably somehow do this in live. You're a good multitasker. And you go, can you believe that play? To which I'm like, well, I saw the whole second half for the most part. I haven't really seen, I didn't see anything that, and so thank goodness I had it paused and I went back. And so I got to experience it sort of like it was live, right? Because I didn't have to go to it. I just watched the last 5 minutes of the game, and it happened with about 4.5 or 5 minutes left. And I mean, Pete, I called VJ the most explosive athlete in the country. Is he the most gifted freshman in terms of scoring or all-around ability, or is even as he is polished as Cooper Flagg and even Trey Johnson and some of these other guys? No, he's not. But every once in a while, and fortunately, you're seeing more and more glimpses because the blocks, the steals, the rebounds, he's probably does more than some of these other players. He just doesn't do it at the same clip. He's not going to be 17 or 18 points per game. Obviously, he'll probably finish this season, and I bet it'll be maybe 11 or 12 points per game. But every once in a while, Pete, and in fact, I'm going to have Aaron today from the radio show go find your call of that dunk. And if you have it, send it to me.
I don't have it, but okay. That's and Aaron Sexton can grab that.
Okay, good.
But it was, it's funny. We talked about Norfolk State and being from that Newport News area, and that's where Allen Iverson's from. That's what that reminded me of early in Iverson's career, when I think it was a game maybe in Seattle. I forget who was one of his BS, teammates at the time, was shooting a free throw and missed it. And then here comes Allen, like from half court, taking off from what seemed like outside the 3-point line and dunking it with there's something special about the two hands. Like that's what VJ did. Like the two-handed aspect of that is the level of difficulty is even raised. It was an amazing play. One of those deals where you're like, man, I'm lucky I was here for that.
Yeah.
And Pat Nunley, he calls him a lit stick of dynamite. And that's exactly what he is. I love that. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And it is. And even the handful of people that were at that game, you almost feel like VJ gets late in the game and he goes, I better give him something. Better give him a little something. Right.
Yeah.
And he had the hamstring injury that kept him out of the UConn game. That was a shame because Baylor actually played well in that game and had a chance. Would have been nice to see him against that level of competition on the road, getting that kind of experience. But there's a joy to his just overall how he comes across. And I'm sure you've gotten to interview him already. He seems really fun, seems very humble to have all that ability and all that acclaim. He's from the Bahamas. He's just a neat guy. So he's a great representative of the school. And then to have him fly like that, Pete, for guys our age, I'm a little bit older than you, but, you can't help but go back to when we valued Jordan and Dominique and all those people who were doing something we really hadn't seen before. Dr. J has to be the first one, of course. But even the people that didn't get as much acclaim, like David Thompson, was known for having like a 50-inch vertical.
Yeah.
I
those early dunk contests.
Oh, it was just
fun to watch.
It was new to us. And then of course Spud Webb won whatever 86 or 87.
I was in Dallas.
that was amazing. But what do you think his vertical is? You think he's got a 45-inch vertical?
Something, yeah, 40, 45, 46. It's got to be up there. I mean, it's amazing because, he's not like physically imposing on the court. And to see hops like that, it is a harken back to some of those athletes and those players because even yesterday I was like, wow, I can't believe I saw that. I don't know that I'll see something like that again. And as you get older, you feel like you've seen it all. So it's kind of like it takes a lot to really grab you, especially now when we live in such a highlight heavy society, right? Like there's always another crazy, somebody's jumping over a car and grabbing a beer and drinking it and dunking it on Instagram. You're like, wow, how'd they pull that off? You see it all.
Yeah, I'm trying to think over the last 10 years who this guy reminds me of. And, you hear comparisons. First of all, by the way, I've fallen head over heels for Rob Wright.
Oh, yeah.
And
he had like 9 assists in like the first 12, 13 minutes yesterday, Rob Wright did.
I think Scott has a little bit of it's not a bad problem, but I think he's got a little tricky thing on his hands here because I think he kind of wants to start Rob. I mean, he's just that good. When he runs the team, everything's smoother, fewer turnovers. He knows how to distribute the ball. Baylor likes positionless guards. Like when they were at their best ever, it was with Maceo, Davion, and Jared. And between Jared and Davion, you couldn't tell like for who was the true point guard, right? So they kind of have that a little bit. Roach can bring it up, even Langston to a certain extent. But Rob is he's the one pure point guard. I mean, Ray J was a point guard. And Baylor historically has functioned better with a true point guard. And so I think
most teams have. Most championship teams have.
Yeah. We both know in the NCAA tournament, it comes down to guard play. You can have all the great, big men, and that helps. But if you don't have guard play, you're in big trouble. And so what I'm wondering is if he's thinking about once Jeremy comes back, I think that's going to be a tough sell to Jeremy to come off the bench. So I'm thinking it's Rob, Jeremy, and I think there's an argument to be made that you could bring Nunn and Langston off the bench and get Rob into the starting lineup. I'm not saying Nunn would love that, but I'm just it's like your first Langston has always been the perfect 6-man. When he's right, he comes in. You don't fall off at all. In fact, you may get a little bit better at times. He can shoot. He's strong. He can rebound. Like Langston is one of the better 6 men in the Big 12 of the last 2 or 3 years. That's the guy he is. And Celestine obviously is going to come off the bench as well. But I don't know that Rob needs to come in off the bench. Like I'm kind of starting to view him and see him as a starter. I mean, you kind of see what are you thinking that?
I do see what you're saying, and the thing, and to your point, where you kind of want a true point guard on the floor. Jaden Nunn's turning into more a scorer, like every day, more and more. I mean, when he was recruited to play at Baylor, at least what I remember prepping for games last year, he was a defensive stopper first, and a guy that can run the offense and score a little. Now he comes into the game, and it's credit to him and Scott Drew that he has evolved as a scorer, and he's like a real weapon. And maybe to his detriment running the team. I don't know. I mean, now I'm like kind of getting into the weeds, but he has become more of a scorer and less of a floor general. And I think that speaks to what you're saying. Rob feels like all floor general that makes plays in the offense scoring wise when they present itself, right? Like sort of take what they give you type deal.
Well, why coaches would be opposed to this is because Rob, if you took Jaden out of the starting lineup, you lose defense. Yeah. Rob's already unbelievable on offense. He's not yet there on defense. That doesn't mean he can't get better, but he's just not. He's not there. None is a borderline elite defender, and he's arguably the best defender on this team. And so you lose defense to gain offense. What I'm wondering is, I mean, think about that bench: Celestine, Nunn, and Langston. I mean, you have 8 killers. You got
and that it's weird when you, for whatever reason, when you present that lineup to me like that, and you go that deep with 3 studs coming off the bench, you immediately start thinking championship or Final Four. Like that's what it takes.
Yeah, and it speaks to Baylor's, how consistent both programs have been. Pete, hopefully this doesn't last more than like 1 week. But I thought that was a weird note. I'm afraid it'll last through the holidays now, if you think about it, because you can't get much movement while you're not playing. That the men and women are both unranked at the same time for the first time since 2003.
Wow. Yeah. Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And like December of 2003.
Dude, is there any other school had a run like that?
I don't know. Not maybe with both programs. I don't think
that's
so.
What I mean. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not fun. But it speaks to,
it's December.
How unbelievable they've been. Yeah. We're not going to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
As you have spent a little time in the PR world. Am I correct?
Oh yeah.
One thing that I found a little bit humorous yesterday about the notes, and I don't know, I want to see if you would have done this, if you agree with them doing it.
I mean, I used to write game notes in the NBA.
I know.
I'm the guy to ask.
You digest those notes, and that's why I'm bringing it up with you. It's a little bit funny to me, and I don't think I would do it, to put the Baylor game notes out and have next to Baylor's name an RV. That's to me, that's a little, especially when you've been a national championship winning program. I don't think you put the RV next to Baylor.
For those who don't know, RV is receiving votes for the top 25. I don't think it's funny because when I worked for the Charlotte Bobcats, you can bet I would have, because we were so terrible. If a guy made a left-handed layup, that was going on the front page of the notes. But it's a little different with the team that is a perennial power. So I do I'm picking up what you're putting down there. Yeah, okay. Maybe you're reaching a little bit, but you got the guy doing the game notes. You're just looking for anything.
RV.
You're anything.
I'm going to start until they get ranked again. I'm calling them the RV Baylor Bears.
Well, and then one was an RV, and then the other was said 25 next to it. I was like,
I think that must be okay. So we only think about the AP poll. There must be like I don't know if they do a USA Today or an ESPN. There's got to be somebody out there putting out a poll that has.
I noticed that too. I was like, okay.
Sagrin. Well, I had Scott on yesterday. I love when Scott starts throwing the Ken Palm stuff at me, because Ken Palm, that's the Bible. I do think that's huge. But Scott, that's religion, man. Scott was one of the first college basketball coaches. He really embraced analytics, and they used a lot of NBA stuff, to his credit. I mean, he was early to that party, and that was like 15 years ago. Back when
I'll tell you a neat Scott thing, and I learned this from Josh Ojamana and not from Scott, and so it's fresh off the top of my mind. I didn't even say this on my show. I meant to yesterday. So this gives you a window into just how awesome Scott is, and just add this to the pile of amazing stories. Josh is struggling a little bit offensively or was. He's really come on of late, but he's struggled to find his rhythm offensively. So literally, he told me yesterday after the game, because he was the guy we interviewed post-game, that Scott was like, hey, come into my office. Like, we're going to watch tape. And so there's the head coach watching tape with Josh Ojanwuna going through like this great length of time into how he can be more effective offensively. You know, like that to me, that's not every head coach is doing that. Like, and it's pretty rare. That's special. And that's just like something that Ojanwuna said as like a throwaway, you know, but because I asked him, I said, how have you been able to focus on offense and getting better? And he gave an answer, but that was part of it. And I was like, damn, that's pretty cool. And Nunley brought it up to me afterwards when he went away. When Ojanwuna walked away, he goes, how about that? I said, yeah, that's impressive. You know, the head coach being like, come on, and then going through film little by little. That's hands-on, man. That's Scott Drew, right?
Yeah, and I think, Josh, that's good. That was really good insight, and I appreciate you bringing that to the podcast. That's more insight than our listeners and viewers are used to when you take us behind the scenes, quite frankly. But and they have to put up with Werder as well, the angry Werder. I mean, just to have
I love Ed Werder.
Just to have someone who's not so moody and antagonistic, Pete. It's just
Werder
it's just
in my life.
You're such a
Werder
breath of fresh air.
Werder gets a lifetime pass. Like I've been hanging on that dude's every word since I mean, you know, 5th grade. So
I'll tell you what, I'll blow your mind. I'll do you one better. No, there's no one better. He's a great friend of mine. But I will say this. One day I'll have you on, and then I'll have a guest. And I'm not going to tell you what day it is. I'm just going to, Pete, can you come on today? And you'll be like, oh, God, Mosley's asking again. And okay, I'll carve out some time. I already have like 10 shows to do today. But I will then sort of slide over like Collinsworth and Al Michaels used to, or whoever. And it'll be Sal Powell.
Oh,
it'll be my buddy
wow.
Sal Powell. And Sal, he'll start talking that Philly talk to you. And then he'll hold up a newspaper. He still loves to start a report. Here's what the newspaper says. Like, okay, anybody under 30 has never seen one of those, Sal Powell, but keep holding up your newspaper.
That is Sal Powell.
He's a good friend.
Is a legend. Legend.
Can I tell you one quick Sal Powell story that you'll love?
Absolutely.
I'm covering Monday Night Football. One night, the Ravens are playing. I'm at ESPN.com. I'm doing this whole blog for the entire NFL. I mean, there's a lot of pressure, and some executive from the Ravens tells me Ray Lewis is out of this game. He's been knocked out of the game. And they tell me, and I get it from somebody, you know, very high ranking in the organization, that he's not Chad. Okay. I do know Chad. Chad's a big, tall guy, and has a sister of some fame. But anyway, I've been told that he's torn his triceps muscle, and so of course he will not be. And I can't remember is he may have tried to play his way through that game, or I can't remember if he didn't come back. Whatever the story was, I had it right, and so I give it to our news desk, and then it just goes straight to the Monday Night Football. I didn't even know. I was still young enough at ESPN. I was like, how does this even work? And next thing you know, Michelle Tafoya or whoever's doing it at the time is like on live, according to our sources. Of course, they didn't credit me, but whatever. I'm just up there blogging away, just giving them information. And they go, Ray Lewis has torn triceps. And so after the game, Chad Steele probably, or whoever from the Ravens, you know, like it's after the game, and at some point, like Sal Powell, you know, reports, you know, my source is telling me that it's a torn triceps for Ray Lewis. And I'm just like, man, that's so uncool. Like I'm the one who reported this story, and everybody else is taking credit for it. I even went to Ray after the game and said, Ray, and he kind of was looking at me like, I can't tell you what the injury was, but whatever kind of wink or something he gave me, let me know that my information was correct. Well, at some point in the evening, in the aftermath of that game, the Ravens push back hard that that's not correct, that it's not a torn triceps. And that's, I don't know where that came from or whatever. And so and like the next morning, there's a new report out. There's another Sao Paulo report. And Sao Paulo, and I wake up to this, and Sao Paulo says, as only Sao Paulo can, he says, Matt Mosley reported it as a torn tricep. So he gave me the story back when he felt like it was wrong. And we were friends. We knew each other. And so it's like, wow, that's pretty weird to be handed. So it's like it was ripped away from me and then handed back to me when they thought it was wrong.
That is an instant classic, dude. That's amazing.
So the last part of that story is he's on. It might have been Kimmel. It might have been. I'm trying to think who he was on with. Anyway, he's on either Letterman or Kimmel. I think it's Kimmel. And about 3 weeks later, and somehow the injury comes up, and Ray Lewis, right there after the Ravens pushed back hard that it was not a torn triceps, said, "Yeah, I tore my triceps." So I felt vindicated. He said it on a national show. And I remember telling everybody at ESPN, whoever the news people are, I'm like, see, he just confirmed my report. Yeah. But I always thought that with my colleagues all love that Sal, when he decided it was wrong, he handed me back my report.
Oh, that's an amazing one.
Okay. All right. You've got shows to do. I've got one more thing I want to bring up with you.
Yeah.
And, let's see. Here we go. This situation with Bill Belichick going to UNC. And I got to tell you, Pete, this whole thing has seemed like kind of a joke to me. Like he's either playing them, he's either trying to, you wouldn't think the greatest coach in the history of the NFL needs leverage over other NFL teams. If they want to hire him, they know where he is. They know what he's done. They know what he's accomplished. He doesn't need an offer from UNC to give him more leverage with another organization. But it just felt weird. It almost felt like a favor to UNC, and then UNC's dogged pursuit. I kind of understand why maybe you would want to talk to somebody of that magnitude. But at the end of the day, I thought they'll end up hiring somebody like Sumrall from Tulane or somebody, because, if you think about it, these pro coaches, they tried to do it with the guy at Arizona State, and it just was a disaster. Herm Edwards. It ended up being a disaster. I know he had been out for longer and been a broadcaster, but anyway, none of it ever felt real to me. To the point I just kept saying it was worth bringing up because it kept getting more and more steam.
Yeah, but I'm right there with you. I didn't buy it at all the whole time. And just like you, I know because I've been very close to situations and organizations and teams before. I know there's so much we don't know. So I was thinking, I wonder what it is here that's got him doing this. Is it, to your point, can't be leverage and then. Here's the theory that I have, and I will share this on the obstructed view. Okay, this is dangerous, but not really. Look, anytime I've had a brand new girlfriend that I've been in love with, I have been early on, especially first year, you're subject to making wild decisions. Okay, that's somewhere. Your boy Parcells has in his book. He said his father told him this, and I love this. He said, when you're looking at a situation like that, never discount stupid. It's always in there somewhere. There's something in there that might just be bad decision-ish, even though we all love Bill Belichick. I want to turn this back on you to what you know and your sources. So do you think he was given the idea that he would not get a head coaching job? Is that what this is? He was very prudent about doing, reconnaissance and said, you know what, I'm not going to get an NFL job. I didn't last year. I want to get back into coaching. And if that's the case, it makes sense to me because the guy is a coach and coaches coach, and that's what they do, right? But I find it hard to believe that no NFL team was going to hire Bill Belichick.
That's the interesting thing is that I think there's something to what you're saying. I think whoever he has feelers out there and representatives, he was being pretty honest about certain organizations. He kind of clowned on the Jets. People thought the Jets could be some kind of possible destination for him, and he basically joked about their owner. Maybe he sensed that his time in the NFL had truly ended, and that probably reverberates around the NFL, because if you think about it, Kraft is very he can't get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for whatever reason, but he's a huge voice and he has a huge platform among owners, and I think those two they have a real love-hate relationship, and it's mostly hate right now. And so I'm not so sure that Kraft hasn't worked against him, from what I can tell, in terms of just letting other owners know like what that experience is like.
Like, Matt, how come I would have thought, now this again is a perfect ending to this story, or I guess a perfect chapter in a story that's still developing. The Giants would have been an amazing fit. But I guess, again, there's so much I don't know, but just you want to plug and play. It's like, wow, that would be, talk about a fan base that needs, a shot in the arm. That's exactly what that is. Or Tom Brady being with the Raiders. The Raiders suck. Who knows if Antonio Pierce is coming back? I don't know if he pulled the trigger a little too fast, but again, it's Bill Belichick. He's got all kinds of information that I'll never have that this decision was based on. But I don't from a personal, like now, and I went to rant on my show yesterday. I never make like these weird rants, but I did. I felt strongly about it, so I said, screw it. I'm going to say this. I don't like him going to college. I think he'll flirt with irrelevance by the middle of next year. People will forget he's there. And he'll be on the CW game at 11 a.m. against Wake Forest, right? And God willing, I'll be calling the game, right? So I'm not saying I'm too big for it, but I just think that Bill Belichick is, and it's kind of a bummer that this might be how it ends. And in 3 years, Matt, he's 75. So what then? It's over.
Yeah, this seems to be a play for his son, which is weird.
Yeah, and that stuff gets super weird too. Like if you go, like you being around doing Houston games, Kelvin Sampson is a man crush of mine, but he's got his son Kellen waiting at Houston, who's going to take over for him. Like, now is Kellen Sampson ready to be a head coach? I don't. Maybe he'll be the next Bob Knight, but I have no clue how that kid's going to do. But Kelvin has the leverage there to get that done, and you really need to have a stranglehold on a situation and an organization or a football program to get a request like that to go through. But it seems like that's what he's got.
Yeah, and from a middle of the pack ACC team, now I'm hearing, Pete, they're going to commit like $20 million in NIL. Don't you know those previous coaches like Mac or whoever are always like
losing their minds? And by the way, I was on with Cam. I was on with Cam. It doesn't take any kind of swami, but Cam and I were talking about it. This is like 3 days ago. I said, well, Michael Lombardi's already got his bags packed to be the director of football operations. And lo and behold, there he goes. And those are two guys too. Like I like their contributions to the media circle. So I'm going to miss them. I love Mike Lombardi, even though he's a blowhard sometimes. I think he's got great insight, and I love his stories about Bill Walsh and Al Davis. So I'll miss him. And we were falling in love with Bill Belichick. This new Bill Belichick was great. And I think also Pat McAfee bears some blame in this too, because he made him relatable enough that made Bill Belichick sort of college eligible, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, we can see this guy. Because guess what? Bill Belichick's an endearing guy, and he's a good man. And I didn't like some of the stuff, like the more he gained steam in New England, I don't appreciate guys. I don't care who you're talking to. Like the bullying of people that are covering your team every day, trying to make a living is kind of bogus. And I thought he drifted into that, which is a bummer. But overall, he's going to have to like soften a little bit now because you want guys to come play for you. Like as much as these guys have all kinds of amazing recruiters working underneath them, right? These college football coaches, like I always say, like, who the hell would ever want to play for Brian Kelly? But I mean, he's got some guys working magic for him because he gets amazing classes.
He sold them a bill of goods is what happened. He went in there and he convinced them that he could create an NFL program at the college level. And that's how they'll sell this thing. And again, these kids these days, sadly, fortunately, Baylor's ended up with a lot of, but I mean, when people ask for the truth from Dave Aranda, how are you doing this? Or why do you have this team? Whatever. We pay players. Obviously that thing kind of took off. And so it comes down to a total transactional type deal. You can't tell me that Bill Belichick in that first meeting where they bring a recruit and they want Belichick to close things for them. And the recruit and his parents are somehow asking for like over the course of time, they're like a $10 million commitment. I mean, it's just, he's going to think it's the most idiotic thing ever. And then the other part is the parents may understand the Belichick thing, right? Like the greatest of all time. But these kids in his heyday, these guys he's going to be recruiting out of high school, were like 11 and 12 years old. They were not that tied in.
Yeah, but I think that's where the parents do wield a pretty big stick. Like a lot of times your parents, whether it's a single parent home or two parents, like they're kind of moving you in this decision. And I think him being Bill Belichick does swing a pretty big stick. I think that will help him in recruiting. I am surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because you just kind of touched on it. We have completely abandoned like any thought of higher education. We're not even like screwing around with it anymore. Like the quote that he had with Pat McAfee was no regard for anybody in the education realm, but he was like, we're going to have an organization that will get players ready to play in the NFL. And I think that was, you get that board of regents or whatever they call them at North Carolina, that like emergency meeting before they were to approve this. I'm sure there were some people that were like, hey, what are we doing? Like, yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, this is what it is now.
The one thing, and I'm not anyone that'll ever like tout University of Texas. All right. You don't normally catch me doing something like that, but I did hear a speech. I just happened to hear a little bit of a speech Sark was making to the Texas High School Coaches Association. And I thought it speaks to what you just said about higher education. I was kind of shocked to hear this. He talked about when he first arrived, what the team GPA was, like 2.28. And then it was like, I think some teams will be like, it sounds pretty good. And then he said the next year was like 2.68. And that year they first went to the playoff last season they got it up to like a 2.98. And I just thought that was interesting that a coach would spend his time at the Texas High School Coaches Association where he's trying to endear himself with these high school coaches and all that kind of stuff. And they want to hear X's and O's and they want to hear, how do you do this? Or what are you running? Or how do you come up with these play concepts? That he got up there and talked about the evolution of the program. Every year their team GPA got better. They got better as a team. And I thought, wow, that goes counter to a lot of what we're hearing and certainly kind of what you're talking about. Pete, we got to do this more often. I love coming on with you, and
I'm here whenever you need me, Mosley. You know, I
can always tell when you've given up completely on the poor sad sack Cowboys. I mean, think about how hard that is for Cowboys. It's like, you don't call me. I mean, almost every week, all season, we've talked Cowboys.
I want to give you a break, dude.
They call the 5-8. Boy, my phone dies. Like, nope, not hearing from Pete. But
I wanted to give you a break, but trust me, I've got some plans for you coming up here.
Oh man,
in the next week. I can't believe they lost that game.
Oh, that's bad.
That was bad. But again, I feel like it's kind of. There's a little more clarity. Let's just move on from Mike McCarthy and start anew. It was a danger zone. As somebody who just is a fan of football, like I really felt like Jerry's delusional enough where he would have maybe even kept Mike McCarthy if he could salvage any kind of a decent season.
Meanwhile, your team, the Eagles, has won how many games in a row? Like
8,
9?
I think. Yeah.
Okay, so they're on this streak, and then they're all at each other's throats. To me, that kind of reminds me of those Cowboys 90s teams. Like there was always problems, and there were always people at each other's throats, and yet they just kept winning. And so maybe that's not all bad.
You know whose name nobody has said, and you got to give the guy a little bit of credit because he's kind of coming back from the dead, is Howard Eskin. You know, he has the show with Brandon Graham. For Brandon Graham, his comments went viral. Yeah. And Eskin always he'll get the story. But yeah, that doesn't concern me so much right now. I just want him to keep winning because last year it was the same deal, and then we melted down. So I just want to see them continue to win into the playoffs. I don't give that stuff too much credence until you start to lose. Then I'll pay attention.
I always looked over there and I was just like, is this guy for real? Like I could not believe that there was a guy in the media that would show up at those news conferences wearing like a
fur coat.
Fur coat. You know, he's got a brown fur coat. I'm just like, what is going on? And of course,
but he's like you, Matt. He's like you in a regard, like he would always show up to all the games. He was always there. Yeah. So it's hard to like knock a guy like that. All right, I gotta go. Our boss Corey Dickman's calling me. I gotta get over to the other studio.
Man, I would like for you just to put him on speaker right now. And we'll just bring him right in. I'll give him a piece of my mind. I mean, do not.
Mosley, thanks for having me, brother.
Do not. That is our episode of Obstructed View, and that is the great Pete Sousa. Pete, thanks for doing that, buddy. And now go meet with the overlords and demand more money. All right?
See you, bud.
There he goes.
We are Rogue Media Sports.